Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sobriety and Everything Else. My name is Eric Andrew. I am your sobriety coach and host for our show. We are coming to you live from my dining room. Yep, I said it, my dining room, and I keep saying we, and it's really me, myself, and I. So I guess that's we, right? There's four of us. So anyway, here we are. We are going to talk today about the idea of the question of why. Why in sobriety? How does that work? Why the question, superficial or a deep dive? Why? We're going to talk about how it's both. It's both in sobriety. And we're going to talk about why. Why is both. So I'm going to deep dive into the question of why. How about that? Deep dive into the question of why. And what does it mean for us in sobriety? Okay, so I don't know about you, but I have some time under my belt now with sobriety, and I feel like a very different person than I did when I first came in. When I first came into sobriety, I felt like I was very surface, very kind of nothing. I was in no control over anything, that my life was under somebody else's control that was out there in the universe somewhere. And everything that was happening to me was somebody else's fault, and that I was innocent and didn't do anything wrong. And why are these people doing these things to me? And that went for everything. That went for relationships. That went for my job. That went for it raining outside on a day that I was supposed to go somewhere. It went for everything. They didn't have the right pears at the store when I went to the store that day. Whatever it might be. I blamed everything around me. And my attitude towards life was, again, like I said, very surface, very like there's nothing deep about life. It was just what it is, right? And then I got into sobriety and I found a different idea. And where I found that different idea was in the question of why. So I'm going to take you back to year one. Year one, I'm trying to just not drink. I'm trying to get through the firsts of a year one, so first of everything, and not drink. And trying to plan that out. What am I doing if I go here? What am I going to do if I go there? All right, well, I'm going to a baseball game, and if I smell beer, how do I handle it? If I'm sitting at a restaurant having dinner and I smell wine, how do I handle it? All of those kind of firsts and all that kind of stuff. So if you would have asked me what why meant to me at that point, what was my why I drank, I would say that it was because I was having fun. I was loving the idea of having a party. I loved the idea of being buzzed. I loved the idea of hanging out with friends and just drinking. I loved the idea of fitting in and being part of the crowd and being part of the group. I liked and loved the idea of not having to worry about anything, just enjoying having a good time with people. That's the way I would look at it. And I would have probably told you that my fear of becoming sober was that I would start missing out, that I would be on the sidelines and everybody else would be out there having a good time. And here I sat. And because I couldn't handle my liquor, I had to sit on the sidelines or otherwise find myself in jail again or whatever it might be. That was my idea of it early on. I also felt like that early on that, 1, 2, 3, I would get sober. I'd get a year under my belt and then I could just go off into my life and everything would be great and wonderful. And I wouldn't have to think about a thing again. And I could just act like it never happened. Pretty much how I was handling everything that had happened to me when I was out there active. Well, none of that was true. None of that happened. And in fact, what did happen was in year 2 and beyond was when I really started to have to look at the problems around me as being something that I was doing, something that I was creating. I was starting to suddenly take responsibility. There's this great thing in sobriety. Laura McKowen wrote it in her book, We Are the Luckiest. And in that, there were two of the first things that she wrote down, there's 9 things, and two of the first things was, this is not your fault, but this is your responsibility. And I always remember that, especially the responsibility part, because I think that it is our responsibility. That, yeah, you know what, maybe genetics was part of this, maybe trauma was part of this, maybe it was all of that that was part of this. But the only way we're going to heal is if we take the responsibility to get better. No one's going to make us better. No one's going to have some sort of magic word that's going to change everything. We need to do the work. And the work is hard, but we need to do it. So in year 2 was when I had to really do the deep dive into the question why. So let's just recap up to where we're at. The question of why in year 1 is very superficial. It's very much surface, right? It's just this, why did you drink? Well, I drank for fun. I drank to be part of the group. I drank to relax. You know, these basic superficial things that really don't mean a whole lot, that literally anybody could say and they would kind of have the same feeling, right? Year 2 and beyond was when I really had to dig deep, when I really had to get in there and go deeper into that question of why I drank. So I had to get past this idea that it was, oh, I just want to have fun and I want to keep the party going and all of that, and start thinking, well, why did I drink the way I drank? So it's one thing to drink. It was another thing to drink the way that I drank. So why did I do that? Why did I continue to take risks and chances when I had been in trouble before? Why would I do that? What was the reason behind doing that risky behavior? And when I started asking those questions of why, was when I realized that there's something deeper here. There's something else that's happening. And I started to piece things together. It started out with a conversation actually that my brother and I had early on when I first got in trouble for the very last time. It was about a month or so, but almost 2 months later. And we talked about this idea of perfection and my concept of that I had to prove to people how great I was, like I was trying to still fit in to the in crowd in high school or whatever it might be. And that really hit home because he was right. First off, he was right. He hit the nail right on the head. And secondly, for my brother to bring that up was a big deal. So I had to really dig into that. And that was something that, now that was before sobriety happened. So it was kind of stayed on the shelf for a while. And then when I got into year 2, 3, 4 and beyond, I started to bring that back out and take a look at it and go, okay, well, what was the reason that I felt that I needed to prove things to people? Why did I feel like I needed to be perfect and do everything right? And I started to look back at my childhood and things that happened at home and things that I took to heart that maybe I shouldn't have taken to heart, that I shouldn't have given so much validity to, but I did. And I took those things. Nobody made me do it. I took those things out of my years of growing up and brought them into my adult life and used them as barometers to judge whether I was doing well or not doing well, whether, somebody would like me or not like me, instead of just being myself and allowing myself with all my flaws to just be present. And I learned that later. I learned that in sobriety. I learned that in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, as I dug deeper and deeper. And as I dug deeper and deeper, I decided that I really needed to get into counseling. So I started to go to counseling. And in that, I started to find out that I had some attachment issues with how I related to people and how I attached myself to people, especially women, in my life. And the why of that. Why was I doing that? So now I'm going even deeper. Why am I doing these things? Well, where does it come from? Well, it comes from an insecurity that I had in, when I was growing up, and an insecurity about how people would like me or not like me, and what I had to do to make sure that they continued to like me, or what I thought I had to do. Maybe that was more important. But all these things were important for me to learn about myself so I could get better. Now, getting better for me doesn't mean that they're all solved. Getting better means I recognize that they exist, and I recognize that they are kind of weaved into who I am at this point. but I have to know that they're there. I have to recognize they're there. And then I have to use tools, just like I did in sobriety. I have to use tools to help myself get through those moments of high anxiety, especially in relationships. And it's not always easy. I don't always do it right. And it's hard. It's a struggle. But at least I know. And I take all of that back to, in early sobriety, I learned this idea about space. And so when I think about why, I think about that space of what can I do about these things now? How can I deal with these things? And I think in space, that's where the power is, because then we can make a choice, right? So we have, the issue at hand, whatever it might be, and then we have what the outcome is going to be, meaning what is our choice? How are we going to handle this? So for instance, if my anxiety gets revved up in terms of my attachment issues, and I recognize this revved up. Now I have a choice. I have a choice. Do I respond the way that I've always responded, which is with a very anxious message to the person that is all fear based, that has no validity in it? It's not real. It's made up in my head. I had a woman actually tell me that you realize all this is just made up in your head. And as she was leaving and never to hear from again. But she had every right to do that. I don't blame her for that. But she was right. It was something that was made up in my head, and I had to understand that. So I have a choice. I can play on that, and I obviously know the outcome, or I can stop. I can breathe. Tell myself, listen, this is in your head. You're making this up. Stop doing that. Just breathe. Allow for space and time. Give this person an opportunity. And stop worrying about it. You are okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You are fine, and you will be okay. And even if the outcome is bad, you're going to be okay. So stop worrying about it and stop making it into something that it's not. And that's a conversation I can have now with myself because I've done the work. I did the work on why. I dug deep onto why and really got into it and really started to focus in on these issues and things that were part of and led into or fed into this idea of my addiction. So these are just, as I dig deeper and I start to work on and heal some of these things, all this is doing, it's actually doing two things. One is solidifying my sobriety. It's making sure that I will continually stay sober because I know about these things and I have an idea about them. And it's also helping me to become a better partner, a better person in my own life, because I know what are these things that are triggers for me. And I know what I need to do in order to try to get past them or work with them in some way. And so in the end of all of this, the question of why has really helped me to do, it has allowed me to have power in my life. And I thought about that word for a second before I said it because I wanted to really think about what is really happening. And that is what's happening. And I have power in my life because I have choice. And I have choice in my life because I did the work to find out what was going on. And I realized that the place I want to be is in space between, what has been the thing that is triggering me and then what is the outcome. That space, so in between my hands, is where I want to be. Because in that space, I have choice. And that's what I want to be doing and want to be working on in terms of all of this. So when you are set up with that question of why, realize that eventually, if you do the deep dive into why you are who you are in recovery, that you're going to open the door to a lot of information that's going to help you. Is it going to be easy? Nope. Is it going to maybe be pretty tough? Yeah, because you're going to have to face some things that maybe you haven't been facing. But can it be? Can it relieve that stress that you've had? Can it take the pressure off? Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you realize it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay that you've gone through these things. You're not unlike other people. We all have our things, right? We all have our stuff. So just keep working. Just keep working. Be willing to dive deep into why. Understand your first answers to why, especially in that first year, are probably going to be a little superficial, a little bit more surface. That's okay. That's kind of where you're at right now. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need to make that deep dive early on. You really don't. You can wait. There's time. And then when you start to get into that second and third year where you're not worrying every day about drinking, now you have time to put into yourself that work and dig deeper into the why and start working on who you are and allow that authentic self, that essence of who you are to come out. Okay? All right, guys, listen, it's been great bringing this to you. I hope that this helped in your quest and journey to get better and stronger as a person in recovery. And I will be back talking to you very soon. Take care.